Hello, Northstar here with another Northstar Talks Politics. I actually did a couple videos recently which were plagued by updates to my audio software, which um, caused the audio to be dead. I apologize if someone watched. I think one of them got live before I noticed the issue and pulled the videos. Uh, they were more on the lines of bureaucracy, how it's used to control people, uh, enforce stratification of power, and uh, the dominance of the rich in our society as the government, which outlines rules and creates bureaucracies, is mostly bought and sold by lobbying and political nations these days. Therefore, it becomes a tool of the powerful, unsurprisingly. Even worse with corporate bureaucracies, but I was talking mainly about government ones. This, I guess, tangentially relates to another issue. Uh, Within the past 5 years, there was a flurry of activity, 5 and 7 years, um, about secret recordings of government officials. Um, this headline is deceptive. Courtway's ban. What it actually was is that a lower court judge ruled a ban on secret recording government officials in the carrying out of their public duties, mind you, not in their private lives, was a ban on that was ruled to be unconstitutional, to be a violation of First Amendment rights by a judge in Boston. This resulted in a First Court of Appeals case. You can see highlighted here, First Court of Appeals. Uh, a U.S. District Judge ruled that law may not constitutionally prohibit the secret audio recording of government officials, including law enforcement officials, performing their duties in public spaces, subject to reasonable time, manner, and place restrictions. Of course, this has been perverted by Boston political insiders, such as prosecutors. They're always connected to the police, to claim that this is somehow about wiretapping, even though this was specifically ruling with regards to the public's right to record police and law enforcement and government officials, not to the rights of law enforcement to record the public, which are two different standards. Indeed, there's different standards with regards to, for instance, um, and this is more about that case. Uh, One versus two party consent is what it comes into to recording. Um, but let's briefly hear this is from congress.gov. You can see some discussion of this. For instance, there's different set of rules with lawyers, with clearly carved out exceptions for uh, when the recorded statements themselves could constitute crimes such as bribery or threat of bribery offers or threats. So, for instance, there's different standards when it comes to lawyers as opposed to the public. There's also the concept of one party consent, which many states have enshrined in law: New York, Texas, Illinois, Ohio, Michigan. And there are exceptions for recording things for personal records. Um, but this gets into all sorts of. There's a double standard, an attempt um, to eradicate the rights of individuals to protect themselves against government abuses of power while giving the government, uh, honestly, pretty broad leverage to record people. I mean, there's a million exceptions carved out for the police, for the FBI, for intelligence agencies to record people. Sometimes secret courts approve these things. Sometimes it just gets done with minimal oversight. And yet, at the same time, individuals are tried to be prevented from recording what would reveal evidence of malfeasance. Now, um, there hasn't been any. There's this case, but as far as I know, there hasn't been any overture of the district court decision. So, in the state of Massachusetts, for instance, the district court decision would have to stand unless an appeals court overruled it, though there may have been such a thing. Um, but it's different in every state, which, for instance, Congress.gov clearly refers to how the law differs between from state to state. Elsewhere, the law is more complicated. A few states require this, a few states require that. Um, a substantial number disagree of states referring jurisdictions, even greater number have yet to announce opinion. This was about specifically attorneys, though, so state-specific laws vary widely regarding one-party consent. Some states, like New York and Texas, follow the federal standard and permit one-party consent. That means someone who's party to a conversation can record it in those cases, but not third parties. I can't clarify more on that. I'm not a lawyer. This much is stated clearly by the legal experts, that much, but then there get to be murky areas around the edges, and the distinctions are messy. Enough of that. The point being is there's an imbalance of power here, and this imbalance of power is only growing worse as our system becomes more authoritarian. The U.S. slides towards fascism, and of course there's going to be effort to reinforce the ability of police and law enforcement to court individuals, while at the same time individuals are not allowed to record police and law enforcement government officials. This can take all sorts of implications and forms. For instance, I dealt with a Social Security Administration official at a local office who behaved abusively and rudely towards me. Now, when you call them, it says the conversation is recorded. So they're recording you. It tells you when you call. And that's, I guess, implying by my continuing on the call phone that I'm recording to that, consenting to that. But if I were to say, try and record this official, a lot of them would probably hang up, and if they knew they were being recorded, and I can't easily, I don't have any way to obtain the recording that they make of me. So this individual behaves rudely, abusively, and lies to me. In case of the official I talked to at the local office, they applied an outdated rule on work history requirements for Social Security disability that as far as I can tell, hasn't been in the law since 2015, so for 10 years now, to try and say that I didn't have enough quarters of work, even with the missing work history I have, even though the rule law as it currently stands on this, and the rules are very clear that you can earn your work credits for SSDI any point throughout the year, so you can earn more than one credit per quarter of a year, which helps, for instance, like when you have a regular work, if I'm working a bunch of overtime part of the year and then I'm working part-time other parts of the year, which happened in my case. This is one of the reasons I get screwed by the older rule and why I'm glad that the law was changed. But this person was quoting outdated rule and then falsely saying I asked to speak to the supervisor. Oh, I'll take it up to them. Called again later. Same thing. Oh, take it up to them. Did I ever receive a call from the supervisor like was promised? The person said they'd call me. No. Would the person put me directly through them? No. They were blocking my ability to speak to the supervisor. They were rude and aggressive to me. They falsely accused me of that, even though I used a very, very level tone, exactly the same throughout. And the only thing I did was move the phone closer to my mouth at one point while maintaining exactly the same tone, because I'm familiar with these kind of people who will lie and falsely accuse you of being hostile to them while they're being hostile to you. And this person laughed at me. I'd say laughed in my face, but it was over a phone call. Was rude, was hostile, lied, misrepresented things. I maintained complete calm, but this person could try and do that. Now, I don't have ability to force them to share the recording that's made of phone calls, and so my best course of action then becomes contacting the federal office of Social Security, filing a complaint, and saying I want them to listen to the recording because it clearly proves what I'm saying. But I don't have the ability, if I say had a recording from my own personal use, I can't use that to show that if I were to theoretically have such a thing, I wouldn't be able to use it to prove that this person was hostile and abusive towards me because of these consent rules. At most, such a thing could only be used for my personal record keeping, and in some states, even that could get you in trouble. So it's an imbalance of power, and it is used to control people. In this case, to deny control people and allow officials to behave abusively to the most vulnerable, someone seeking disability. Why? Because I was disabled with long COVID, a virus that was due to the government malfeasance on how the coronavirus pandemic was handled. I say that with absolute certainty and expert knowledge because I studied viruses in grad school. I had the opportunity to study under people who were experts in pandemics and had advised the White House, one professor before, on multiple times before that. One of my professors had advised the Obama administration, so not Trump or Biden, but Obama administration about pandemic risks and such. We'd even specifically studied coronavirus as a possible pandemic threat in the class taught by this professor. Uh, so I know that there was knowledge of the dangers here, and yet it was not taken seriously. Millions of people died across the world, over a million in the United States. Over 4 million Americans were disabled with long COVID, and over 65 million people worldwide. Unfortunately, that 65 million is an outdated number, and it's probably over 80 or 90 million now. That was an early figure, and there haven't been any more authoritative figures since on how many people are disabled with long COVID globally. We do know that the numbers are being undercounted in the third world. So there's a lot of people disabled in poor countries in Latin America and Africa who there's poor records exist and very little government assistance for them, and many of them are just dying, starving because they're too sick to work and there's no government support for them, or they're becoming drains on their communities because their local community ends up having to support them without government help. So I become the victim of that, of long COVID, of government not handling the pandemic seriously and prioritizing the profits of the rich. And then I have to deal with the abusive government official, and then I'm not even allowed to record the government official when they're behaving abusively towards me, when they are laughing in my face at the statement that Social Security disability is a social safety net and exists to protect people against things like unexpected disability. When I said that, the person literally laughed at me and made hostile statements about if I took things to appeal to a judge. Rude, hostile, arrogant, and condescending behavior from this person. And I can't record them or use recordings of them to prove their behavior. It's insane, and it's an imbalance of power. And similar things go with police, who try to make it so they can't be recorded, so you can't say prove police brutality. And it's even the person who is being brutalized, if they had recorded the police officer, there's attempts to prevent that from being admissible in court. How is someone supposed to prove people did something if they can't record it? If third parties can't record it, and if their word is considered less trustworthy than that of, say, a police officer or government official, you see how this is an attempt to control, and this is part of the problems with their system. Part of the problem with their system. It's part of the problem with what capitalism has done to the U.S. system, because the billionaires know that they are a tiny proportion of the population, the billionaires and the multimillionaires, the capitalist class in Marxist terminology, and so they rely on systems of stratification and oppression to maintain their power. Kind of like how, if you've ever, there's a little bit of reflection on this kind of pattern, even if it doesn't couch itself in anti-capitalist terms, in Andor, which I've been watching lately. It's an excellent TV series. But even in real life, I don't think it's that hard to see how it's fairly intuitive that if you have a tiny group of people and they hold power and they need to maintain that grasp of power, they create a stratified system so that they can have collaborators who are more privileged than the rest of the population, like the police and certain bureaucrats. And those people, in turn, a larger number of people, help keep the rest of the population down. And then the general population is disempowered via various legal mechanisms, with then the rule of law being held up as the highest standard when the laws are only created by the rich and powerful. This is the world we live in. This is where capitalism naturally leads. It's not that socialism can't end up doing similar things to this. Unfortunately, the Soviet Union somewhat trended in that direction, but there isn't the same motivation to move things in this direction. And of course, the world's never seen, say, a democratic socialist system, because the only time these systems came to being, say, Chile, when a socialist was elected, the U.S. did a coup there and put Pinochet in power. So we haven't gotten a chance to see a system that's more virtuous very long, though, Pinochet's Chile was oppressive. Allende's Chile, the socialist who was elected, did not go around with these brutal systems of oppression. So Pinochet was fanatically capitalist. Allende was a socialist. That's just a tiny snippet of comparison, but it's worth looking at. Anyways, I wish you folks all the best. Take care of each other. Be kind to yourselves. May you always find a guiding star to lead you home. Remember, I'm not giving legal advice here, but I'm pointing out the contradictions and reporting on the law here and how the system is manifestly unjust. Wish you all the best.